You think you can get on a spaceship with your soul? Let's take a look at Marshall Applewhite and the Heaven's Gate cult.
Ladies and gentlemen of all ages, boys and girls, thank you for tuning in to yet another episode of Angry Meat Production. We appreciate you coming in and letting us be a part of your lives week in and week out. We hope to do our best to present you with something that your eardrums delight in. Whether you're looking at us on YouTube or Rumble, or listening to us on Spotify, Google, or Anchor, or any of the other podcast services that we are currently on or trying to get on. We thank you. And if you don't mind, at the end of every episode, stop by, leave us a comment, leave us a like. If it asks for 5 stars, we'll take 5 stars, even if you don't like us. 5 stars are what it's all about. With that being said, we hope you enjoy our attempt to make our advocation our vocation. Ladies and gentlemen, let the games begin.
Welcome, Angry Faithful. Today, we're going to talk about Marshall Humphrey Applewhite Jr. Yeah, he also is known as Dew. Well, if you look at the photo of this guy, it's just crazy how he looks. But that's not what we're going to go with. And talking with this guy, we're going to also talk about Heaven's Gate cult. And if you remember back in 97, how that ended up happening, you understand the craziness of this guy. But let's get to it. Marshall Humphrey Applewhite Jr. was born in Spur, Texas in May 17th, 1931. To Marshall Humphrey Applewhite Sr. and his wife, Lois Winfield. He had 3 siblings, son of a Presbyterian minister. Applewhite became very religious as a child. Applewhite attended Corpus Christi High School and Austin College. At the latter school, he was active in several student organizations and was monetarily religious. He earned a bachelor's degree in philosophy in 1952 and subsequently enrolled in the Union Presbyterian Seminary to study theology, hoping to become a minister. He married Anne Price around that time and later had 2 children, Mark and Lane. Early in the seminary studies, Applewhite decided to leave the school and pursue a career in music. Why are all the cult leaders and crazies end up becoming musicians? Charles Manson was trying to be a musician. So was what's it called? Jim Jones. Yeah. Jim Jones trying to be a musician. It's kind of weird. Becoming music director of the Presbyterian Church in North Carolina. He was a baritone singer and enjoyed spiritual and music of Handel. That's what it is, Handel. In 1954, Applewhite was drafted in the U.S. Army and served in Austria and in New Mexico as a member of the Armed Signal Corps. What are the Armed Signal Corps? Armed Signal Corps is a branch of the U.S. Army that creates and manages communications and information systems for command and control of combined armed forces. And it was established in 1860. The brainchild of Major our James Myers. Anyways, he left the military in 1956, enrolled in the University of Colorado, where he earned a master's degree in music and focused on musical theater. You know, I have bad speaking terms, but oh well. I'm gonna stumble along. It's gonna be fun. Yeah, I gotta Got a person that says we're dull, so I'm going to try to make it a little bit more hefty. But these things can't really be all too hefty. I don't know. Reading off a script and everything like that, you can't really. You can have a little bit of spontaneity, especially when you read something messed up, like Robert Patterson, the pig farmer killer, and when he used a dildo as a suppressor. But you can look at that episode later. You're with me in the here and the now. Applewhite moved to New York City after that for his career, and in an unsuccessful attempt to become a professional singing career. Upon finishing his education in Colorado, he taught in the University of Alabama. Applewhite lost his position there after pursuing a sexual relationship with a male student. Okay. Uh, it's one of those things it just surprises you. Well, he had a sexual relationship with a male student. That was all left field. Okay. His religious education was likely not supported by the same sex relationship, and he was subsequently frustrated by his sexual desire. He separated from his wife when she learned about the affair in 1965, and they divorced 3 years later. When Applewhite revealed to his parents that he was homosexual, his father rejected him. And that happens. Not that much anymore. Everybody does not care. In 1965, after leaving UA, Applewhite moved to Houston to serve as a chair of music department in University of St. Thomas. His students regarded him as an eager speaker and a stylish dresser. He became a local popular singer, serving as a charcoal director of hold on. I'm gonna have to Stephen Hawking this. If you're new to this, I Stephen Hawking this, which I like to call Stephen Hawking because it's gonna sound like a speaking spell. Episcopal Church and performing a Houston Grand Opera. In Houston, Applewhite was briefly openly gay, but also pursuing a relationship with a young woman who left him under pressure from her family. He was greatly upset of this outcome. He resigned from the University of St. Thomas in 1970, citing depression and other emotional problems. Robert Batch and David Tyler, sociologist who studied Applewhite's group, speculated that departure was promptly by another affair between Applewhite and a student. The president of the university later recalled that Applewhite was often mentally jumbled and disorganized near the end of his employment. 1971, Applewhite briefly moved to New Mexico, where he operated a dissident. What? Oh, a deli. We'll just call it deli. They used a big word. We're just going to use deli because, I'm stupid. He was popular with customers, but decided to return to Texas later that year. Applewhite's father died around the same time. The loss took significant emotional toll on him, causing several depressions. His debt mounted, forcing him to borrow money from friends. Introduction to Nettles and the First Travels. 1972, Applewhite met Bonnie Nettles, a nurse who was interested in biblical prophecy and theology. The two quickly became close friends. He later recalled that he felt like he had known her for a long time. Concluded that they had met in a past life. Nettles told Applewhite their meeting had been foretold by extraterrestrials. I guess this is where the whole cult thing starts. Pursuing him as a divine assignment. By that time, he had begun investigating alternates and traditional Christian doctrine, including astrological. Applewhite had begun to live with Nettles. Nettle isn't. It's a simple thing. Stephen Hawking, help me out. Nettles. Although he cohabitated, their relationship was nothing sexual. Fulfilling his long time wish to have a deep and loving yet platonic relationship. Nettles was married with 4 children, but after she became close to Applewhite, her husband divorced her and she lost custody of her children. Applewhite permanently broke off contact with his family as well. He saw Nettles as his soulmate, and some of his acquaintances later recalled that she had been a strong influence on him. Raines writes that Nettles was responsible for reinforcement his emergency delusion beliefs. So basically, we have another Bonnie that basically helped out the guy and messed with his head. So, yay. Back in Bonnie and Clyde. Check it out. Raines writes, oh, okay, but psychologist Robert J. Lipton speculates that Nettles' influence helped him avoid further psychological deterioration. Applewhite and Nettles opened a bookstore known as Christian Art Center, where carrying books from various spiritual backgrounds. They also launched a venture known as Known Place to teach classes on theology and mysticism. The pair closed the business a short time later. In February 1973, Applewhite and Nettles resolved to travel to teach others about their beliefs and drove throughout the Western United States. Lefton describes their travels as a restless, intense, often confused, permanently spiritual journey. While traveling, they had little money and occasionally resorted to selling their blood or working odd jobs for much needed funds. The pair essentially need water. They mostly ate bread. They mostly. The Paris essentially solely on bedrolls at time. Okay, they slept and camped out. Sometimes they didn't pay for lodging bills. One of their friends from Houston corresponded with them and accepted their teachings. They visited her in May 1974, and she became their first convert. While traveling, Applewhite and Nettles pondered the life of Francis of Assisi? Hold on.
Assisi.
Assisi, who was better known for was a Italian mystic and Catholic friar who founded Franciscans. He was inspired to lead a life of poverty and as a preacher, and read works by authors including Haley Belaski, R.D. Linning, and Richard Birch. They kept a King James Version Bible with them and studied several passages from the New Testament, focusing on teaching about Christiology. Sorry. Ascendance. Well, Stephen Hawking's going to help us out with this one.
Asceticism.
Asceticism and eschatology. Well, asceticism is absence from sensual pleasures, often the purpose of pursuing spiritual goals. And eschatology is a major branch of the study of Christian theology, dealing with the doctrine of the last things, especially the second coming of Christ. Applewhite also read science fiction, including works from Robert A. Howling and Arthur C. Clarke. By June 1974, Applewhite and Nettles' beliefs had solidified into the basic outline. They concluded that they had been close to fulfilling biblical prophecies, and they had been given higher level minds than other people. They wrote a pamphlet that described Jesus' reincarnation as a Texan, which, I mean, Texas is the best thing, but I don't know about the whole reincarnation in Texas. I mean, it's kind of hot. I mean, it's close to the desert temperature. So, anyways, Then he veiled reference to Applewhite. Furthermore, they concluded that there had been two witnesses described in the book of Revelation, occasionally visited churches or other spiritual groups to speak on their ideas, often referring to themselves as the two or the UFO two. The pair believed that they would be killed and then restored to life, and in views of others, transported into a spaceship. This event, which they referred as we're gonna Stephen Hawking that one.
Demonstration.
The demonstration was proved their claims. They to their dismay, these ideals were poorly received. Weird. In 1974, Applewhite was arrested in Harlingen, Texas, for failing to return a car that he had rented in Missouri. He was extradited to St. Louis and jailed for 6 months. This is going to be weird, but this is his only arrest. So he didn't really do anything really harmful to and the eyes until like the events, but he really was like kind of a keep to himself unless he was talking about his church theories. At the time, Applewhite maintained that he had been divinely authorized to keep the car. I wish you could do that. It's like, hey, dude, God told me I can keep it, so I kept it. Oh, sorry, didn't think about that. Go ahead and keep that car. While jailed, he pounded theology and subsequently abandoned discussions of occult topics in favor of ETs and evolution. After Applewhite's release, Nettles and he resolved to contact extraterrestrials and begun. And sorry, my speaking is really bad because my dyslexia. I'm not saying that's an excuse, but it's just some certain words I can't talk. So just bear with me. Began seeking like-minded followers. They published advertisement for meetings where they recruited disciples, whom they were called the crew. At these events, they purported to represent beings from another planet, the next level, so to speak, who sought participants for an experiments. They claimed that those who agreed to take part in the experiments would be brought to a higher level of evolutionary. Nettles and Applewhite refer to themselves as guinea and pig. Weird. Okay. Applewhite described his roles as laboratory instructor and serving as a prime speaker, while Nellis currently interjected clarifying remarks or corrections. To solely personally spoke with attendees, only taking phone numbers with which they could contact them. They initially named their organization the Anonymous Sexaholic Collaborate Church, but it soon became known as the Human Individual Metamorphosis. Applewhite believed that ancient astronauts hypnotized hypothesis, which claimed that extraterrestrials had visited humanity in the past and placed humans on Earth and would return to collect a select few. Part of this teaching bears similarities to Reformed Christian concepts of election, like owing to Applewhite's Presbyterian upbringing. Applewhite nearly set advertisements to groups in California where invited him to speak to New Age devotees in 1975. At this meeting, they pursued about half of the 50 attendees to follow them. They also focused on college campus, speaking at Canadian College in August. At a meeting in Oregon in September of 1975, they had further recruitment successful. About 30 people left their homes to follow the pair, prompting interest in media outlets. The coverage was negative. Commentators. Yeah, commentators and some former members of mocked the group and level association of brainwashing against Applewhite and Nettles. Brinching Taylor stated that Applewhite and Nettles ensued pressure tactics, seeking only devoted followers. Benjamin E. Zeller, an academic who studied new religions, noted that Applewhite and Nettles' teachings focus on civility through individual growth, and seeing that it's similar to currents in the era of New Age movement. Likewise, the importance of personal choice was also emphasized. Applewhite and Nellis denied connection to the New Age movement, which, if you remember, the New Age movement was basically a range of spiritual and religious practice beliefs that grew in the Western society during the 1970s. Basically meditation, other stuff. And that's the reason why we have a lot of cults in the 70s. They just grew up on that stuff and didn't stop until like if you look back, a lot of the cult stuff started big in the 1970s. There's still cults and everything like that, but it more or less grew in the 70s because everybody was wanting something new. Likewise, the importance of personal choice was also emphasized. Applewhite and Nellis denied connection to the New Age movement. Jonah Lynch, a psychologist who studies cults, attributes their recruitment success to the erratic mix of beliefs and the way that they divvied from typical New Age teachings, discussing liberal spaceships while retaining familiar language. Most of the disciples were young and interested in the occultism and otherwise lived outside the mainstream society. They became a variety of religious backgrounds, including Eastern religion and Scientology. Most were well versed in New Age teachings, along Applewhite and Nettles, to convert them easily. Applewhite thought that his followers would reach a higher level of being, changing like a caliber, becoming a butterfly. This example was used in almost all the group's early lectures. He contends that this would be a biological change to a different species, casting his teachings as scientifically truth in line with specular naturalism. He emphasized earlier followers that he was not speaking metaphorically, often using words as biology and chemistry in his statements. It basically probably made him look smart. So by the 1970s, Applewhite attempted to avoid use of the term religion, seeing it referred to interfere to science. Yes, okay. We'll go with that. Nomadic lifestyle. By 1975, Applewhite and Ellis took the names Bo and Peep. Okay, I get it. It took me a second. Bo Peep. Okay. They really like taking two different one thing and separating, making one thing and the other thing. That's cute, I guess. They had about 70 followers at this time, saw themselves as shepherds leading the flock. Applewhite believed that completely separation from earthly desires was prerequisite of ascension to the next level, and emphasized passages in the New Testament in which Jesus spoke about forsaking worldly attachments. Members came constantly instructed to renounce friends, family, media, drugs, alcohol, jewelry, facial hair, and sexuality. Wow, that's a lot. Then you just give up everything. Furthermore, they were at first required to adopt biblical names. Applewhite and Nettles soon told them to adapt two-syllable meanings that ended in Odly. O-D-Y, Odly. And the Korean constitutes the first syllable, such as wow. Okay. We're going to just speak and spell the first one just because it's really weird. Hold on. Ruckody. And the way it's spelled, it's Rkkody. The next name is Jodidi. We're gonna speak Jimmy, which is Jmmody. And the last one that they
Lovedy.
Lovedy, Lvvody. That being dyslexic and seeing that shit fucks with your head. I'm not gonna kill you. I'm not gonna kid you. It fucked with my head. I was like, and there's no fucking chance in hell. But anyways, Applewhite stated that these names identifies that his followers were spiritual children. He and Nettles and their followers lived in religious scholar James Lewis described as a quasi-nomadic lifestyle. They usually stayed at remote campgrounds, did not speak about their beliefs. Applewhite and Nellis ceased having public meetings by April 1965 and spent little time teaching doctrine to their converts. The pair also had little contact with their dispersed followers, many who renounced their allegiance. Applewhite and Nellis feared that they would be assassinated and thought their followers that their deaths would be similar to those to witness of the book of Revelation. Oh, okay. See, crazy people think weird shit. No one probably even thought about them. Blanche and Taylor believed that Applewhite's prison experience and earlier rejection by audiences contributed to this fear. He spent 6 months in jail. Jesus. Okay. Sometimes it's small steps that help you out. Applewhite and Nellis later explained to their followers that their former treatment by the press was a form of assassination and had fulfilled their prophecy. Whatever helps you out in your head, I guess. Applewhite took the materialistic views of the Bible and seeing it as a record of extraterrestrial contact with humanity. He drew heavily from the book of Revelation, although he avoided traditional theology and terminology and took a somewhat negative tone towards Christianity. He only lectured about a small number of verses and never tried to develop a system of theology. By early 1976, Applewhite and Nellis had settled on the names Do and T. Hold on, it's T.I.
T.
Yeah, T. Do and T. Do T. Do T. Okay, I got it. You have to combine the damn things just to figure out what the fuck they're trying to get at. It's fucking hilarious. This is a fun one. Do T. Their duty to their converts or the aliens. Applewhite started that these were meaningless names in June 1976. It is kind of a fucking ridiculous name. They they even saw it themselves. It was like, listen, they're fucking meaningless. We just like to be called this. They guaranteed their meaning. Remaining fallen to a medical Bow National Forest in the southern eastern Wyoming, presuming a UFO visit. Nettles later announced that their visit had been canceled. I'm so glad that I was like, hey, listen, they look like they're giving up. We're just gonna say the aliens told us the ship's gonna cancel. They had a hyperdrive mess up. What's a hyperdrive? Fuck. At this time frame, they didn't know about hyperdrive. No. When did Star Wars come out? And they knew about warp drives because of Star Trek. Let me see Star Wars. A New Hope. Just curious. 1977. So yeah, this time frame, they didn't know about hyperdrives. So we'll call it warp drives. We'll give it warp drives. I have to. So sad. Applewhite and Nellis then split their followers in small groups, which they referred as star clusters from 1976 and 1979. Okay. I'm going to put a pause on the from 1976 to 1979. And how do you. I understand, like, trying to convince doomsday cults and everything like that. And these are how cults form up. and studying these cults phenomenons for this podcast, you finally get, behind the scenes stuff. So, cult stuff doesn't seem like it can affect you, which it might still affect you. I might be surprised myself, especially older I get. But it just becomes very weird. And it's like, hey, the ship's canceled. Sorry, I knew about this. I knew this is gonna happen. It's because of Steve over there. Yeah, we're gonna separate Steve and the other group, and hopefully we see hopefully we separate you into star clusters. They'll figure you out, and boom, ship. But anyways, from 1976 to 1979, the group lived in campgrounds, usually in the Rocky Mountains or in Texas. Applewhite and Nellis began to place greater demands on their followers, henceforth losing structured lives, which improved membership retention. They technically communicated with their disciples in writings, although through assistance. Increasingly, their emphasis that they were the only source of the truth, the idea that members could receive individual revelations, were rejected in an attempt to prevent division of people. Applewhite also sought to prevent close friendship among his followers. This is cult MO. Basically, you get it to where your followers can't talk, they can't formulate ideas within the group, and then they go against their leader. And Hill Kid, this guy, did the same thing. A lot of the other cults do the same thing. So if someone's telling you, like, I don't know, left and right groups from political establishment, that you can't talk to these people and everything and form a bigger bond, it's a cult. Just realize that. And a lot of people, most of my ideas are, I guess they're right-leaning, looking at the factors and everything like that. But I bounce around both sides. But I don't like the idea that you can't talk to another person about their beliefs and see if you can form some kind of connection with them. We're these animals that connect with each other through our ideology or debating our ideology. We can be different people, but still work together to help betterment of mankind. But anyways, fearing this could lead to insubordination, he and Nellis insisted that the followers practice what they refer to flexibility, strictly obedience to their often shifting requests. The two leaders limited the group's contact with those outside the movement, even some of whom had been interested in joining, obviously, to prevent inflation in hostile parties. In practice, this made their followers completely dependent upon them. Applewhite instructed his disciples to be like children or pets, and their submission, they're solely responsible to obey their leaders. Members are encouraged to constantly seek Applewhite's advice and often ask themselves what their leaders would do when making a decision. To his followers, he did not seem dictatorial. Many of them found him laid back and fatherly. In his 2000 study of the group, Winston Davis stated that Applewhite mastered the fine art of religious entertainment, nothing that many of his disciples seemed to enjoy their service. Noting that many of his disciples seemingly enjoyed the service, Applewhite organized seemingly occult rituals that were intended to instill a sense of discipline in his followers. He referred to these tasks as games. He also watched science fiction television programs with the rest of the group. Rather than issue direct commands, he attempted to express his preference and normally offered his a disciple a choice. He emphasized that students were free to disobey if they choose, in which Lanch dubbed a illusion of a choice. Yeah, I've heard about that. I think I had to do a little bit more study on that. Housing and control. In the 1970s, the group received large sums of money, possibly an inheritance of a member or donation of followers' income. This capital was used to rent tents, initially in Denver and later in Dallas. Applewhite and Nellis had about 40 followers then and lived in 2 or 3 houses. The leaders usually had their own house. The group was secretly about their lifestyle, covering their windows and blocking out any kind of looky loos. Applewhite and Nellis arranged their followers' lifestyles as a boot camp that would prepare them for the next level, referring to their house as a craft. Still on the spaceship references and sci-fi. They regimented the lives of the disciples down to the minute. Okay, they regimented their lives of their disciples down to the minute. Students were not committed to the lifestyles, were encouraged to leave. Departing members were given financial assistance. Huh, that's weird. Most older cults and everything don't help you. I was like, hey, you gonna leave? Well, here, we'll help you out with your leaving and everything like that. You have a good day. That is weird. Departing members were given financial assistance. That's fucking I as a cult, it's not a bad cult. Lefton states that until you get the end. Lefton states that Applewhite wanted quality over quality, quality over quantity in his followers. Although he occasionally spoke about gaining many converts, Applewhite would sometimes made sudden, drastic changes to the group. On one occasion in Texas, they told their followers a forthcoming visitation from extraterrestrials and instructed them to wait outside all night. At which point, they informed them that this had been merely a test. Lynch sees this as a way to that they increased their students' devotion, ensuring that the commitment became in respective of what they saw. Members became desperate for Applewhite's approval, which he used to control them. In the 1980s, Applewhite and Nellis had about 80 followers, many of whom had jobs, often working with computers and as car mechanics. In 1982, the pair allowed their disciples to call their families. They further relaxed their control in 1983, permitted their followers to visit relatives on Mother's Day. They often only allowed short stays and were instructed to tell their families that they were studying computers at a monastery. These vacations were intended to place families by demonstrating that their disciples remain with the group of their own accord. In 1983, Nellis had an eye surgically removed as a result of cancer diagnosis several years earlier. While she lived for 2 more years, dying in 1985, Applewhite told his followers that she had traveled to the next level because she had too much energy to remain on Earth, abandoning her body to make the journey. His attempt to explain her deaths in terms of the group doctrine was successful in preventing the departure of all but one member. Oh, wow. Only one member stayed. Applewhite became very depressed. He claimed that Nellis still communicated with him, but he suffered from crisis of faith. His students supported him during this time, greatly encouraging him. He then organized a ceremony in which he symbolically married his followers. Lynch views this as an attempt to ensure his unity. Applewhite told his followers that he had been left behind by Nellis because he still had more to learn. He felt that she occupied a higher spiritual goal than he did. He began identifying him as the father and often referred to her as a with male pronouns. Oh, he identified her as, okay, I read that right. identified her as the father and referred to her as male pronouns. Applewhite began emphasizing a strict hierarchy, teaching his students needed his guidance as he needed the guidance to the next level. After Nella's death, Applewhite altered his views in Ascension. Previously, he taught that the group was physically ascended from the earth and that death caused reincarnation. But her death, which left behind a unhinged corporeal body, forced him to say that the ascension could be spiritual. He concluded that her spirit had traveled to a spaceship, receiving a new body, and that his followers will do the same. Right. He concluded that her spiritual travels through space, received a body with the followers, and he would do the same. And his views, biblical heaven would actually the biblical heaven was the actual planet in which highly evolved beings dwelled. Physically, bodies were required to ascend there. Applewhite believed that once they reached the next level, they would evolve on another planet. Emphasized that Jesus, whom he believed was an extraterrestrial, that word's gonna mess me up all the fucking day. Came to Earth and was killed, and his body rose from the dead for being transported onto a spaceship. According to Applewhite's doctrine, Jesus was the gateway to heaven, but had found humanity unready to ascend when he first came to Earth. Yeah, I can see it. Applewhite talked that he has a walk-in, a concept of which he gained popularity in the New Age movement during the 1970s. Walk-ins were said to be higher beings who took control of adult bodies, teaching humanity. This concept informed Applewhite's views of resurrection. He believed that his group's souls were able to transport onto a spaceship, where they would either enter other bodies. Applewhite abandoned the metaphor versus of a butterfly in favor of describing the body as a mere container, a vehicle that the soul could enter and exit. This domicile may be a product of Christology that Applewhite learned as a young man. Lewis writes that the group's teaching had Christian elements that were basically gifted into the New Age matrix. In a profile group in Newsweekly, Kenneth Woodward compares his dualism to the ancient Christian Gnosticism. Hold on. Gnosticism, sorry. Christian, a collection of religious ideas and systems that calculated in the first century AD. Among Jewish and early Christian sects, these various groups emphasize personal spiritual knowledge, gnosis, above a proxy orthodox teaching. Although Peters notes that his theology departs from gnosis by privileging the physical world. In the wake of Nellis's death, Applewhite became increasingly paranoid, fearing conspiracies against his group. One member who had joined in the mid-1980s recalled Applewhite avoiding new converts and worried that they were interlopers. A fear of a government raid on their home spoke highly of the Jewish defenders of Mossad, an ancient Israel who showed total resistance to the Roman Empire. Is that how Mossad is the ancient function in the southern district of Israel, stationed in the top of an isolated rock? That's what Mossad means. That's actually cooler now, because I know the Mossad is the name of the group that actually tracked down the Nazis back in the day for war crimes or ending their lives. They're assassins, basically, but they mostly track down Nazis. he began discussing the apocalypse, comparing the earth as an overgrowing garden and has recycled and reboot, and humanity was a failed experiment. In accordance to the garden metaphor, he stated the earth would be spaded under. Woodward noted that Applegate's teaching about the earth's recycling is similar to the cycle perspective of time found in Buddhism. Applewhite also used New Age concept, but he offered. Hold on, I got sidetracked. But he differed from the movement by participating that apocalypse rather than utopia changes the control. He speculated cities' sexual urges and as the works of Lucifer. In addition, he stated that evil extraterrestrials, whom he referred to as Lucifer. God damn, making new words. I hate people making new words and then you have to pronounce them.
Luciferians.
Luciferians. I can't even say it. It's fucking hilarious. Luciferians sought to thwart his mission. Basically, the lizard people are coming to take over from another dimension. Yeah, that's the thing. He argued that many that's a thing of thinking. That's not an actual thing. That's not something I actually believe, just to let you in on check out fucking Alex Jones for that shit. It's so fucking hilarious. He argued that many prominent morals teachers and advocates of political correctness were actual Luciferian. That word is killing me. Luciferians. We'll just go with that. This theme emerged in 1988 as a possible response to lurid alien abduct. Is that lurid?
Lurid.
Yeah, lurid alien abduction stories that were proliferating at the time. Basically, there was a lot of alien abductions at the time. A lot of people started coming out with alien abductions at that time frame. Actually, it was a little bit sooner. It was like in the 1960s, but they went with the Roswell stuff. But anyways, in the late 1980s, the group kept a low profile. Few people knew if it still existed. In 1988, they mailed a document to details their beliefs to various New Age groups. The mailing contained information about their history and advised people to read several books in which the primary focus was Christianity, history, and UFOs. You know, I wonder if this is where they got the ancient alien stuff from the TV. Anyways, with the expection of 1988 document, Applewhite's group remained inconspicuous until 1992, when they recorded a 12-part video series in which they broadcast via satellite. This series echoed many of the teachings of the 1988 update, although it has introduced a universal mind of which its hearers could take part. Over the course of the group's existence, several hundred people joined and left. In the early 1990s, their membership dwindled, numbering only 26. These defections gave Applewhite a sense of urgency. In 1993, the group took the name Total Overcomers Anonymous. Oh, wow. Then spent $30,000 to publish a full-page advertisement in the USA Today that warned of a catastrophic judgment to befall the earth. Its publication led to 20 former members to rejoin the group. This, along with a series of public lectures in 1994, caused the membership to double from its beginnings of the decade. By this time, Applewhite did not regain. Hold on.
Regiment.
Applewhite did not regiment his disciples' lives as strict as he had spent less time with them. In the early 1990s, Applewhite proposed some of of his teachings on the internet, but he had struggled to resolve criticism. That year, he first spoke of the possibility of suicide as a way to reach the next level. He explained that everything human had to be forsaken, including the human body, before one could ascend. The organization was renamed Heaven's Gate, where we get the Heaven's Gate cult. Davis speculated that rejection may have encouraged him to attempt to leave Earth. From June to October 1995, the group lived in a rural part of New Mexico. They purchased 40 acres. And I'm sorry, and built a compound which they referred to the Earthship, using tires and lumber. Applewhite hoped to establish a monastery. This proved to be a difficult endeavor, particularly for the aging Applewhite. He was in poor health and at one point feared that he had cancer. Lefton notes that Applewhite's activity leadership of the group probably led several fatigue in the last year. I guess several people left. The winter was very cold, and they abandoned the plan. Afterwards, they lived in several houses in San Diego area. The group increasingly focused on the suppression of sexual desires, and Applegate and several others opt to surgical castration. This is where it gets weird. The last bit, the men ended up chopping off their penises. Yeah, that happened. They initially had difficult finding willing surgeons. No, it probably wouldn't be that hard, but eventually found one in Mexico. Go figure. In Applewhite's view, sexuality was one of the most powerful forces that bound humans to their body, and thus hindered their efforts to evolve to the next level. He taught that the next level beings had no reproductive organs, but that Luciferians beings had genders. Okay. He also cited a verse in the New Testament that said that there would not be marriages in heaven. In addition, he required members to adopt similar clothing and haircuts, possibly reinforcing that they were all non-sexual family. Here's the thing. I had this thought like yesterday when I started reviewing this and going over some of the stuff and taking notes. One of the things that prompted me when I got to this part, I was like, dude, could you imagine going up to heaven and then you're supposedly what, that you've been married for like 40, 60 years, goes up there and he's like, hey, I love seeing you again and everything. Oh, but this woman is my soulmate and she's more attractive. I'm gonna go with her. And you just get like cock blocked in heaven. That was my thought. I don't know why, but that was my thought. I guess there's a good reason why you just heaven's non-binary. Anyways, in October 1996, the group rented a mansion in Rancho Santa Fe, California. That year, they recorded 2 videos messages in which they offered their viewers the last chance to evacuate Earth. Around the same time, they learned the approaching of Halley's Boop comet. Halley Boop? I thought it was called Halley's Comet. Hold on. That messes with my head. I thought it was just Halley's Comet. Halley Boop. I guess it's Halley Boop. Bop. I guess it's not Halley's Comet. It's the bright and tragic comet of 90s. Halley Bop. We'll just go Comet Halley Bop. That's what it is. HALE-BOPP. That's what it says in the report. So Applewhite now believed that Nellis was aboard the spaceship trailing the comet, and that she planned to re-device with get back with them on the spaceship. Fucking people with words. He told his followers that the vessel was transported them to a distant planet, and that the government conspiracy was attempting to suppress word of the craft behind the ship, where you can't really see anything. That's where the spaceship is. In addition, he stated that his deceased followers would be taken to the vessel as well, a belief that resembled the Christian rapture doctrine. How he learned of the comet, or why he believed that it was a comet to the extraterrestrials, or why he should have believed the dead Nellis would be there, would be with them, is unknown. In late March 1997, this is when it all happens, the group isolated themselves and recorded farewell statements. Many members praised Applewhite in their final message. Davis describes their remarks as rigorous of Dew's gospel. Do it. Applewhite recorded a video shortly before his death in which he terms the suicides the final exit of the group, and remarks, "We do, in all honesty, hate this world." Okay. Lewis speculates that Applewhite settled on suicide because he said that the group would ascend during his lifetime, so approaching a successor was unfeasible. That's kind of fucked up. That's really fucked up. Hey, nobody can be the leader, so we're all going to die together. That's my take on it. Fuck that. Religious scholars Catherine Welsberg proposed that the suicides began on March 22nd. Most members took barbiturates and alcohol, then placed bags over their heads. They wore Nike shoes and black uniforms, with patches that read "Heaven's Gate Away Team." The bags that contained a few dollars and a form of identification were placed beside their bodies. The deaths occurred over 3 days. Applewhite was one of the last 4 to die. 3 assistants helped him commit suicide. They killed themselves. An anonymous tip led the sheriff's department and searched the mansion. There, they found 39 bodies on March 26th. It was a large group suicide involving U.S. citizens. It's one of the largest suicides involving U.S. citizens since the massacre suicide of 913 in Jonestown in 1978. Jonestown, Jim Jones. That's that one. We already covered that one. Applewhite's body was found seated on the bed of the mansion's master bedroom. Medical examiners determined that his fears of cancer had been unfulfilled, but he suffered from coronary atrophy. This is a pattern of the disease arthritis in which the walls of the arteries developed abnormalities called lesions. These lesions may lead to narrow due the buildup of authorizing plaque. A onset there was usually no symptoms, but if they develop symptoms. Okay, wow. So he was dying. The death provoked a medical circus, and Applewhite's face was featured on the cover of Time, Newsweekly, in April 7th. His final message was widely broadcast. Huge urban of Ohio State University describes his appearance in the video as wide-eyed and rather alarming. Analysis of the whole thing. Although many popular commentators, including psychologist Margaret Singer, speculate that Applewhite's brainwashed his followers, many academics have rejected the brainwashing label as a oversimplification. That does not express the nuance of the process by which the followers were influenced. They were brainwashed. it might be oversimplification, but that's what it was. They were brainwashed to believe this stuff. Lance speculates that they were willing to follow Applewhite in suicide because they had become totally dependent upon him, hence were poorly suited for life in his absence. Davis attributes Applewhite's success in convincing his followers to commit suicide to two factors. He isolated them socially and cultivated an attitude of completely religious obedience in them. Applewhite's students had made a long-term commitment to him, and Blanchard and Taylor infer that this is why his inner participants of events apprehend coherence to them. Most of the dead have been members for about 20 years, although there were a few recent converts. Lewis argues that Applewhite effectively controlled his followers by packaging his teaching in familiar terms. Well, yeah, that's how you get cult following. Urban writes that Applegate's life displays the intense aberration of alienation shared by many individuals lost in the late 20th century capitalist society. He notes that Applewhite's condemnments commentary culture bears similar to those of Jean Blanchard, who was a fun sociology philosopher and poet with interest in cultural studies. He is best known for analyzing of media, commentary, culture, and technical communication, as well as formation of concepts such as hyperreality. And Berger wrote about diverse subjects at the times, particularly their shared nihilist views.
Nihilist.
Nihilist views. I'm curious, what is nihilist? That's a big word. That's a big word for me. Nihilist meaning. There we go. Is the belief that all values are based and that nothing can be known or communicated. Wow. Okay. Urban posted that Applewhite found no way other than suicide to escape the society that surrounded him, and states that death offered him a way to escape the endless cycle of seduction and consumption. But he, while converting the suicide, several media outlets focused on Applewhite's sexuality. The reason why I'm laughing is because his next post. The New York Post dubbed him the gay guru. Gay rights activist Troy Perry argued that Applewhite's representation in society rejected of the same-sex relationship only led to his suicide. This idea has failed to gain support among academics, which he, at the end, he just didn't feel anything from either sex, hence why he got rid of his penis. So that's God. I really this is the reason why I don't like news outlets at times. Yes, I consider this a news outlet, sort of, because I'm just informing you about the subjects at hand. But major news outlets nowadays, and not the bashes, if you listen to the news and everything, you get a little information. Get the little information you get from news outlets and everything like that, then do the research yourself. Basically, what they did was they researched back in the 70s or 60s and 70s that he ended up having homosexual relationships with other men. And that's the reason why they did this. They took one aspect of the whole thing and they led you to believe the whole thing. It's basically one of those things that is just to grab people to reading says, which is ridiculous, honestly. To the fact of do even my stuff. You can research my stuff and post it on the comments or message me on Facebook or whatever. And I'll go back and research the stuff. I've done it once before with like the Menendez brothers, and we're writing down. This is just the analyzing the phase of this whole cult, and we're done with it. But even I'm wrong with this stuff. If you get into the last part of this whole uh segment of this podcast, yeah, this is all information that I've gathered from little spots and everything of the internet, and even I missed some stuff. Hell, there is one the Waco one, David Koresh, guy that lived there. He sent me a message. He commented. It was fantastic. It was, yes, we get some bad comments at times, but other times we go in and we find other comments, and it's livid. Like well, it inspires me to do more research, because the guy David Koresh was the Waco cult, and a Prime Davidian, I think it is. Oh, I forget. But anyways, what had happened was his family, after the whole ATF and FBI raided the place, fired the whole they set fire to the whole building, killed kids. They still think of it as a triumphant victory, which it wasn't. It was a big fuck up. But anyways, there's a family that lived in the town. They would go to that section and go into the compound, which was a big compound, and they would find like boxes of ammunition and spent casings and everything, just to redo the casings. You can reload casings. It's just brass. So, but they would go back and they would like find boxes of ammunition that haven't been spent yet, and that's how they got ammo, which is kind of strange. But it was, it's nice to hear that thing. And even like I'll tell you right now, there's one that's our most popular video as of right now, the Muffin Man killer, which wasn't a killer, we found out. It was just it was a spoof off type deal. And but the guy's last name, they kept on sending the video to this guy who lives in England, who's I guess a fan. And I hope he's a fan. He's listening. And give me a shout out every once in a while in the comments or something like that. I'd love to hear from you again. Hell, I'd love to interview on the idea that your family could be connected to a serial killer, but it wasn't. It was all fake. But anyways, I love those kind of comments. It was like, hey, there is one where with our first one, Vicky Dawn Jackson, and there's people that lived in Nacona, Texas, that remember that time frame and what had happened, and they some of them are like, listen, she was fucking nuts. We always felt that she was off. It's the reason why she didn't really have that many friends. And it was just, and even with people that talk to me about that stuff, it's a conversation opener. Maybe you can make a friend with that. Anyways, that's about it with the Heaven's Gate cult and Marshall Applewhite. Thank you all for listening. Thank you for all watching. Comment and give bad ones. I don't care. I usually just give you good comments after a bad comment. It was like, hey, we'll try. I have one. I think it was what was it? I'll look it up real quick. There was one comment on one of our. I think it was the what you call it, Muffin Man one that has the most views. It's really weird. Let me see here. Oh yeah, Princess Laura 25 commented, such dull people. I find someone that can tell the story better. I'll find someone that tells the story better. Okay, good on you. But I wrote back, thank you. We will work on it. And and you're not going to find anybody that actually tells the full story of Frederick Thomas Linwood, because there really isn't a story of Frederick Thomas Linwood, aka the Muffin Man. It was one of those things that someone made up. Oh, you're getting hold on. Let me. There we go. Sorry, you get a re-intro on this. What's really funny of that story is if you actually watch like halfway through the story, not even halfway, I think it was like 15 to 20 minutes, we started like questioning it, what we were finding, the documents that we were finding. And because we only found like one document on this, because it was a TikTok video that we were like, oh, okay, we'll take a look at it. And we took a look at it and we're like, holy fucking shit, it's fake. And it was. It was. We were surprised. We played ourselves. We played ourselves. So, yeah. But like I said, comment, have fun with this. This is just a fun thing that we're doing. We love doing it. We do it for free. Hopefully, we get advertisements, so you have to hear some. Let's try to sell some stuff. But have fun with it. We love our audience that actually listens to us. We all enjoy the banter and everything. We probably do this probably about 3 hours throughout the week. Me, Chris, and Johnny Skelton, Chris Jaka, and we just have fun with it. And give Chris a little love. He helps run the BRCC fund. Check them out. Give him a buck. All you have to do is give him a buck. Give the BRCC fund a buck. They help out a lot of people. Really a lot of people. We won't go into the details. We'll let Chris do that, because I'll fuck it up and I'll be hearing from somebody, mostly him. But give him a buck. Show it on your taxes, whatever. If you want to get more money from your taxes, support other people out there. And if it's the BRCC fund is not your cake and everything like that, go support some other people. Other people need your help. I mean, like this group. I mean, they probably left they literally left their families in the dust. But those families got to survive, and they don't know why they did what they did. But there's some people out there that need a helping hand. So be that hand. Love you guys. Talk to y'all later. Goodbye.